Right, hello everybody. So this is a recording of me banging on about handwriting, which is something very close to my heart. Actually, at the request of people from Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2, who've already discovered a method that I use for teaching fully joined handwriting, and people who know that I am not in favour of teaching our little reception children or even our year 1 children a form of print with a lead-in join. So I am part of the group that's saying, let's teach them print at first and let's teach them well. So what I'm going to do, because I've got a lovely audience, I'm going to take them through my handwriting style, and I'm going to try and address questions and thoughts that might arise as we go along. The first thing when you do this, as good teachers, is always to do a baseline assessment. Now, a baseline assessment is a wonderful thing. It's what teachers do all the time, whatever the subject. But it's got multi-purposes. We do need to find out what children can do already. So whether they're absolute beginners or whether they're older children, let's find out. And because we're talking about handwriting, the first baseline assessment is just, can they write the alphabet out? So they might be very young. Can they write any letter shapes? Do they know about capital letters? But for your older children, can they write out the alphabet, which includes capital letters with their lowercase equivalents? You might even ask them, can you write it out in print writing? Make sure they know what you mean when you say print. And you might say, can you write out some joined handwriting? So if you're teachers of older children and you've already taught them joined handwriting, you know that phrase, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. So that kind of uses all of those letter shapes, as well as the alphabet in print. Ask them maybe to write that and see what it's like. Now that's great, because sometimes it opens your eyes. Sometimes you're pretty shocked at what they can't do more than what they can do. Because the same children who might not be able to do that are writing amazing bits of creative writing, genre writing, chronological reports. So it's not that they can't write, but how secure are they in their handwriting? The next thing is, if you've got a mixed age class, and I generally recommend teaching fully joined handwriting from about year 2, not any earlier. So if you've got a year 1, year 2 class, you're going to say to me, well, how am I going to manage that? So the first thing is to make sure that all the children can write in print well. So I wouldn't even start teaching year 2 fully joined handwriting until I've really made sure that they are competent with print writing. If you are a setting where you've already started to teach, perhaps reception in year 1, this print font with the lead-in joins, so you're thinking, well, what should we do now? I still think that all children should be able to print with simple letter shapes, as well as write in a joint hand. So basically, I would look at that baseline and I'd think, actually, let's spend a little time going back to print. Let's get it sorted out, and then we can blast the fully joined handwriting. Now, my style of teaching joined handwriting is literally fully joined. Some people's joined handwriting style is quasi-joined. So there are certain letter shapes that they stop and don't join. But in the main, all the letter shapes are joined for me. Now, questions that arise from teachers, for example, in Key Stage 2. Well, why should we teach the children this handwriting style when some of them are already writing very well in joined handwriting, or we've done another style? So with that question in mind, I would say, because you're all in it together, and it's okay to have more than one handwriting style. So I myself, I've got my school handwriting style that I advocate teaching school children. I've got my personal my personal style, which is just my style that I use with my personal writing. Then there's print writing. And then there's my note taking. And much to my shame, my note taking is illegible, right? tell children that you can have more than one style, but that as a school, it's your duty to teach them a style that if ever they wanted to really present their work beautifully, whether it's a formal letter to someone or a thank you letter or writing out a favorite poem, perhaps to do that with some artwork, that they then have the option to teach in this style if they want to. So it's not to negate what they do already, it's to rationalize it. And if you start deciding that some children are already fine and they don't need to do it, well, then where do you draw that fine line? Because what about the borderline cases? So my recommendation is say, right, we're all in it together. And some of you might not have done my style before. So tell the children that, say you're learning with them. So let's see if they can do better than you. The next thing that's a bit different about my style is it's not done over weeks or terms or years. It's done really quickly. So if you're in Key Stage 2, it might be over a day or two. You can blast it that quickly, and I'll tell you about that and show you how to do that. If you're doing it with younger children, say Year 2, you might decide to take a week or a fortnight, getting individual letters sorted out first. And then when they've got the size and the confidence and the spacing and everything else, really good formation, you transit to joining all those letters together and how to do that. So this is about the age and stage of children. Not only is this style good for teaching children, it's good for remediating poor handwriting. So I've done that in many schools, including in secondary. The next thing, it's not about speedy writing. And sometimes children are so used to a quick formation that that's what they want to do. But actually say to them, at first, we're going to do it like drawing something. Think of it as drawing rather than writing. And then if it's going to be your school handwriting style, there's a responsibility of you all being able to do it for your marking. And nowadays, we do not have to mark at length. So we've gone past the era of onerous marking. We can do minimal marking. I'm going to throw in a little comment that I don't believe in no marking. I think it's actually cruel for children to do all their lovely work and we don't give them any gesture of marking. So I'm not in the no marking camp. But it might be slower for you. Now, handwriting lines are quite interesting and quite important. So generally speaking, my preference is to use lined exercise books for children's writing. And even when children are younger, not wide lines, because children will fill that space. And it's very hard to show them how tall to make the ascenders or the descenders. So have a go with ordinary size writing lines, even for your younger children. And basically desks forward to model, not grouped tables. We have a problem across the whole country, if not the world, with group tables, where if children are referring to a front board for any work, they hook their hands round and they write above their writing, both right-handers and left-handers. We need to be astute to say, to teach and make sure children know to write below their writing so they can actually see it. So we're going to teach the tripod grip, where they hold the pencil at the bottom of the painted part, not down the cone. We have mass holding lots of fingers round like this, all sorts of things. I now call these, contorted holds, which obscure writing. So look at your children, say, are you hiding the writing that you are doing? And then that means there's an obligation on you to try to hold your implements in front of children with the tripod grip as well. And you might not do that at the moment. So, it's about whether you think this is important or not. So all of those things are questions that are raised. So let's see how quickly we can do this. Probably some of you have already seen my videos of how to do this, so I'm repeating myself, but I'd like you to do that with me. Now for that, I hope Sarah's organised for you all to have this handwriting book 1. Brilliant, excellent. Now, as you know, I'm giving this as a free printable. People can print it off as a PDF. And there is a handbook too. And we do say on my website, you don't necessarily need this, but they're there for you if you want to help you along the way. So with that in mind, look at the front page, everybody. Right. And oh my goodness, I have 3 bullet points to describe and encapsulate this handwriting, just 3 bullet points. Now I can't make it simpler than that. So it doesn't have to be made a meal of. So let's start off. So with pencil hold in mind, whether or not you have a tripod grip, try and do a tripod grip now. And also, even with your little children, they are better off, in my opinion, with a normal sized pencil rather than a big, fat, chunky pencil. And they can begin to be taught how to hold a pencil actually from 3 years of age. Just begin to show them, drip feed it. Be confident. Don't let little children that go, you know, lots of children do that nowadays, including my own grandchildren. You know, you have to say, oh, let me help you with that, and be firm and not fearful. I'm leading the charge for fearless teachers. Right, I don't know how this is going to work out with the filming and everything, but I've got a flip chart here. Now, I couldn't find a flip chart with just plain writing lines. The only ones with lines I could find were all of those different tram lines, you know, for when you do different size. Awful. So I prefer just writing lines, and children can learn how to judge what a little half-size letter is and everything else. So my daughter was saying she's going to try and get them made in China because we need them. What's gone wrong with the world? Right. So start with the children then and draw 2 little boxes that are about half the width of the writing lines. And tell them we've got 2 main joins. Now it's a real geometrical approach. It's about straight lines and hooks over and curves, not flair. So none of this is dependent on the children having any natural flair, and it's not dependent on you having any natural flair. So we have a diagonal join to half height, which is going bottom left to top right. So draw that in your little box. And we have a washing line join, which is going like this. And the only thing we have to worry about is the hook over for those curlicue letters. So I'll be talking about that in a minute, but also going to a letter E. So with a letter E, so often we have a word with RE at the end, like this. So when we go from R to E, we're swooping down and going round. But if we're coming from a bottom join, so for example, this, going to that letter E, we've got to do a little bit of a swoop round like that. So it's diagonal join. For the curlicue letters, it's that hook over, back round and catch the hook. And they must do it slowly. And the whole point of this book here, right from the outset, you say to children, right, try to make it that size. And if I see you going too fast, I'm going to ask you to slow down. And I don't want to see any difference, if possible, between those examples and what you do. Now, I've worked really hard on this print-off copy. It's really not that big. It's making them draw carefully. So in your books then, all of you, little careful writing, diagonal line to half height, hook over and back and round, and then stop. Now, if you watch that, I did that diagonal line and then I literally stopped and thought about it and did the hook over. So it's not one action, it's actually 2. So I'd like you all to try a little series now of separate letter C's and talk to yourself, and because you want your children to. So literally diagonal line, hook over, back and round. So can you all have a go at that, please? Diagonal line, hook over, back and round. Diagonal line, hook over, back and round. Diagonal line, hook over, back and round. I cannot emphasize strongly enough how important the notion is of the hook over. Because if you look at everybody's writing, children's writing, they don't do the hook over. And if they don't do the hook over, it throws out all of the following letters when they do the G's and the S's and so on. So when you think you've cracked that, if you were teaching now, you would then look at what the children are doing and adjust accordingly. So you'd go around and say, oh, try to be a bit smaller, watch me. So you step in and you slow it right down. It's not a race. You're going to say, which one looks like the example? Well done, that's excellent. Now, a little point here about a lot of children who have so far manifested not very good handwriting. So they might have been labeled dyspraxic, or they can't put the pressure on, and all of that might be true. But I'm going to say there are very few gadgets that we put on writing implements that really do give an exceptional grip. And very often children might not really need them. And the other thing I'm going to challenge, and just from experience, are children who are said to need these sloping things. Because for the life of me, I can't see how it is easier to write like that than it is to be able to write with the pressure down. And if you're constantly writing on the board, that's hard. It's hard for us to be neat on a board compared to when we write down. So in a way, I you know, all the therapeutic people might be thinking, oh my goodness, what's she talking about? Common sense, try it. And so if you have children who think they need the prop of the slope and the prop of the pencil grip, just try them without the pencil grip and without the slope. And also tables facing forwards, not grouped, good posture literally. And nowadays in a primary school, there is such a big variation of height and size in our children. Some of them stay diminutive right throughout primary, and some of them get enormous. So sometimes you might need to change the desks in your actual classrooms to fit your cohort. And these are things that really count. So in my full training that I've done in the past, I show photos of little boys, you know, with the desk up here, and they have to hook the hand round because the desk's up to their chest. So these kind of things count. Now, when the children have cracked that, we're going to go on to do the other curlicue letters. So A. Now, this is where the hook is really helpful. So it's diagonal height, diagonal, hook over, back and round, catch the hook, straighten up, straight down, and get ready to do the join. Now, here's the thing that's going to be a bit tricky. At this point, we want children to get this pattern for joined handwriting into their heads, because in a minute you're going to ask them to tell it back to you, especially those older children. But actually, when it comes to things like phonics, we want children to be able to form letter shapes and say the sounds. So this pattern is a minute in time. And when we do phonics and we show our flashcards, we don't want them saying patter. And when we do air writing with phonics, and you must always face the same way as the children, not face onto the children. We don't want them saying patter and thinking patter. So this patter is just a moment in time to teach this writing. Right, that's not very good. I can see the angle has gone back a bit. If you find that when you're teaching your children, say to them, oh dear, I've not done a very good job of that. I'll try another one. Because this is such a good leveler with children that you're trying, you might not have done such a great one, because that's where they are with it. We're just trying and say, oh, I'm going to have another go at that, and you have a go at yours. So I want everybody to try that. Diagonal, hook over, back and round, catch the hook, straighten up, down, and get ready. Oh, I'm much happier with that one. So I'd like everybody to have a little go at that letter there. And then, because of time being an issue, we're going to go on and do the D. So again, same pattern virtually. Diagonal line, hook over, back and round, catch the hook, straight up and straight down. Now, if your children's line distance or your board line distance is actually really quite big, they don't have to go up to nearly that line. It's not about, there's no thing to say, oh, nearly touch the line, or you have some of them going up to the ceiling. It's about that judgment, that thing of what looks about right. It just needs to be taller. Right, I can see when I look back that I've gone off at a tangent because I'm sort of a bit cramped up here. I'm not seeing it very well. So I thought, oh, crikey, children, I've not gone straight up. I'll have another go. Diagonal line, hook over, back and round, catch the hook, and then up, straight up and straight down, and so on. Then let's do the G. Now I've got a peculiar little style thing here, which I know someone doesn't like, but it's straight down for these loops and then a thin loop. If you don't like how short I make them or how thin, modify that, but don't make them all over the place or desperately long. So when you do your teaching, you can make them look the size and shape that you think's right. But it's such a good idea, because if you look at examples of children's writing, when they do things like a Y or a G or a J, it really is like a guess as to where they go. There is no consistency and it's very untidy, and there is no flair. So what we're aiming for is to give our primary age children flair and fantastic spacing between the letters, which a lot of handwriting styles don't provide. So let's try a G then. So it's diagonal line, hook over, back and round, catch the hook, straight down through the line, thin loop. So have your own go at that and decide for yourself, okay, what are you happy with regard to length down and the thin loop? What you're looking for is consistency, something that all the children can do comfortably. Now, the next one that is often very poor in children's handwriting is letter S. Because they know they've got to do the extra bit, they make it enormous, and enormous won't do. It starts exactly the same as a curlicue. And so basically, let's all try and do that. Make your S no taller than these lowercase letters. So it's diagonal line to half height, hook over, and then round with a curve and flick. Now, when you do it slowly, and when you start it just the same as the other letters, there's no reason on earth why it suddenly goes high. So when you look around children doing that, nip it in the bud, warn them beforehand not to make it bigger because they know they've got that curve to fit in, that the aspiration is that they're going to make it the correct height. So practice that. The next one that's really interesting is letter O, because this time we're going to have a top join or a washing line join. You might prefer to call it a smile. I don't know who has washing lines nowadays, but it was a thing once. So here we go then. So diagonal line, hook over, back round, catch the hook, washing line join. Very important. Now, when we go on to teach coming off those letters with a washing line join, and there's only a small handful, if that is followed by another curlicue letter, we need to do the hook over. So for example, it's diagonal line, hook over, back and round, catch the hook, washing line join, hook over, back and round, catch the hook. So have a little go to see if you can do that double O. Now ask yourself whether you're trying to do this too fast or too slow, And remember, you're practicing it sort of as if you're children. And in our book here, right, if you've got this for the children, you're looking for the same spacing, the same size, let them do a few letters and then talk to them and say, look at the examples. If your letter's coming up very big, try it a bit smaller and so on. And actually, I've forgotten the most important point of all. They need to have clean hands and not be sweaty. So the number of times I've walked into a school and I've seen a lesson going on, especially in the afternoons, and they've got filthy hands and they are so sweaty. Or I'm conducting some lesson modeling and I can see that they're all sticky and sweaty. Say, right, children, take off your sweaties, your jumpers, take them off. Come on, let's cool down. So really make sure all the conditions are really ideal. And I know that sounds a really silly thing to say, but that's what I find. Right, now I'm going to do the Q and the QU. I teach it as QU because in the English spelling system, English words are always Q and U together. Now, again, Abby Steele commented that she doesn't like the way I do the Q, but I'm going to show you my way. You can practice that. If you want to modify it, do so, but I bet your modifications are no better. So let's have a look at the way I would do it. So, diagonal line, hook over, back and round, catch the hook, straight down through the line, a little curve at the bottom up parallel to the line, and then the diagonal line, and then straight down and round, straight up and flick. Now you have to think we're doing the Q and then we're doing the U, but we still need a spacer between the Q and the U, and the spacers are the diagonal lines. So modifications might be you don't join it to the U, which is a shame because it is a fully joined style. You might do something like this. Diagonal line, hook over, back and round, straight down through the line and straight up to the U. I'm not persuaded that's any better, but what I'm saying is, in anything you teach, there are times when you don't like a bit of it, like a phonics program or a mnemonic system or something. And you need to see it in the scale of things. So sometimes I say to people, if you don't like that bit, then modify it, or don't get nitpicky about that bit because you have to see it in its whole. But then that's down to you. What I'm doing is acknowledging what I was fed back. Then for the F, slight modification, but very similar. So listen carefully. Diagonal line, and then stop and think, and then go up to do the hook over, back and round, straight down through the writing line and thin loop. So you've still got a hook over, you've still got a diagonal line to half height, you've still got a straight back through the writing line. So that's a theme in this whole style, this straight back through the writing line, and you've still got a thin loop. Now I've added here something that I actually put in my patter. There's patter on my side, which is diagonal line to half height. And that can be quite important when we get to joining, actually. It's not just a diagonal line, it is to this half height moment. Otherwise you get this. You get a different shape. You lose your spacer that looks so neat when you see it all joined together. Another thing that's common when you look at children's handwriting on Twitter is this kind of thing. And in a way, we've not given them a clear enough steer about how we can do that letter F. Now, there are other styles from F. I used to do some of the other styles. So another style I used to do was this. You might prefer that. My issue would be a little bit that you don't have your diagonal line spacer, but it's a bit like the E. You've got a flare going up to it. So it's for you to decide. So that's a bit trickier. Now, there's going to be a difference here with your children, and you may want to experiment, whether you're doing year 2 or older children. When you've taught that bank of letter shapes, have a little experiment of saying, right, children, now I'm just going to stand here with my pen, and I want you to talk me through how to join some words. I'll give you the words, and then you tell me how to do it. So you pick some words made entirely of those letter shapes. This is so effective because what you are doing is, what we're doing all together is rationalizing with children which are the joins and which are the letter shapes. Now you can't do that with little children if you've taught them a print font with a lead-in join from the beginning, because they haven't a clue. But when you've taught them just simple print, it's clear, here are joins and here's letter shapes. So I just stand there like this. And actually, with actual children, I will have always said start on the line, because in this style, I am starting on the line every time. So stand there, then they get it, and they say, start on the line. So I'll go with my pen like that. And then I do nothing. Say I want dog, so we're going to do dog. So like that. Then they say diagonal line, so I do it, and I stop, and I make them say hook over, then I stop, then they go back and round, catch the hook, straighten up, back down, and I wait. Then they tell me diagonal line, hook over, back and round, catch the hook, washing line join, hook over, back and round, catch the hook, straighten up, straight down through the line, thin loop. Okay, that's not bad. I'm writing it so much from the side, I can't tell what I'm doing. So basically, at a really early stage of teaching handwriting, you're making them talk back to you. Now, if you're someone who's following the science of teaching, this idea of getting children to talk back to you really pretty early on is so powerful. So in my phonics programs and approach, one thing I've noticed is that teachers do far too much doing of the phonics to the children, and the children don't do enough phonics. So if you're, for example, talking them through an activity sheet, it doesn't take much before they know what to do. You say, now tell me back what I need to do. And then you don't need to do it again. So with this handwriting style, that's where we're leading to with this. Talk me through it. Now, even at the level of just those curlicue letters, the children are writing whole words already. They're doing fully joined writing. Now, in Key Stage 2, you might take a whole morning out to say, right, we're going to do joined writing and we're going to learn the whole lot in one morning. But always slowly. The next stage is when you let them choose a poem or a verse from a poem, and they can copyright, so they do not have to think of any content at all. All they have to think about is intellectualizing it in their new style. But what I'm going to do now is, with this in mind, we're going to look at the next group of letters. So I've broken it down into the ascended group. So we're going to do L, T, H, B, K. So L, again, we start with the join. So it's starting on the line, diagonal to half height, and then up, down, ready to join. Now that diagonal to half height, beautiful spacer. And you really need that because you don't want this. And the other thing you don't want is where there's no spacer at all. And this is the common thing in our joined handwriting, is when children are going just up the stick. So it's just going like this. There is no spacer. And the other thing that happens with this style of starting or thinking you're starting with a lead-in join, I've indicated there, is when you get a ski slope effect like this. You get this. And another thing we see very often with teachers writing on the board, that if they don't model on writing lines, that lead-in join can be any level. It's like this. So it's not starting on the line. So the more you as teachers use writing lines, the better modeling you are doing, setting your board up like a page. So we need to bring back flip charts with just writing lines and whiteboards with writing lines. Next thing is T, and it's exactly the same. Diagonal line to half height, up, down, and then cross from left to right above that join, above the diagonal line. Now, next time we see children's writing on Twitter, look at what's common, this. Or alternatively, up the stick, this. So it's always just that same diagonal line, and that gives it the flair, because from letter to letter, we've got that lovely flair. So the next thing is H, diagonal line, up, down, and then a bridge over. Now, it's important when you're doing things like H and M and N that, and U, that actually when they're doing those side bits, that they're really they're quite parallel, they're quite straight up and down. So have a little look at children's writing with regard to that. It's pointing it out. So it's pointing it out that it's not, or anything like that. It's a really lovely controlled letter shape. So it's a bridge or a half bridge. And it's better to do the H before the B because it's still got the same beginnings, and then you carry on with the B to touch at the bottom. So diagonal line, up, down, and then the bridge going round to the bottom like that. And that's completely different from letter D. It's a very different letter formation. If children in your school, even if it's just one or two, are confusing B and D, then you need to teach it better. And when I look at writing on Twitter and I see, say, for example, lovely writing across a class, and I assume they're the same age, I assume they're from the same class, it's very common to see one or two bits where you look and it has good joined handwriting, and you think, gosh, they've been taught handwriting well. But then if the other children aren't doing that good handwriting, you have to think, oh, they're not teaching it well. They're teaching joined handwriting. But if they were teaching it well, every single child would be doing that good handwriting. And one of the biggest dangers in foundational literacy is that when children can't or don't do this, we then think it's within child issues. But it's our job to make sure that even children with struggles and challenges get to do it well as well. And we can do that. And I haven't time now, but I could give you so many examples with children who struggle, who are dyspraxic and so on, that with enough time and patience and the right approach, you can get them doing a really good job. It's surprising what they can do. Right, HB, where am I? Oh, K. Now, I personally prefer a letter K with the loop on. So even with infants, I opt to teach that loop in my phonics programs. When I worked with Oxford University Press to do Floppy's phonics, they really didn't want that loop. So it was done with like the straight legs, but my preference is that loop because it just works so beautifully right from the beginning. It's got a flow to it. So it's diagonal line, up, down, back up, and do that loop like a ribbon. And the danger there is when they confuse it with capital letter R. So again, it's about that little loopy bit, just starts like an H. So it's an H up until the point where they're doing that loop. So that needs a little bit of practice. So have a go at that. Now, when you've got those letter shapes done, we can go back to them telling you how to write a word. So my examples on this page are lad and tag, but you can work out any word. You can sort of think, right, what could it be? It could be hat. Let's say, right, tell me how to do hat. And you stand there and they say, right, pen on the line, or pencil on the line, diagonal to half height, up, back down, up to do the bridge, diagonal, hook over, back and round, catch the hook, straighten up, diagonal, up, down, cross. Now, not always, but often, the girls are more forthcoming at that. So give the boys a break and forewarn them and say, right, everybody, first I'm going to get the girls to do that, and then it's the boys' turn. So when they know they're going to have a turn without the girls, that was a sexist thing to say. I'm only speaking from experience. They know to listen and pay attention and think it through, right? So the girls might talk you through that, and then it's the boys' turn. Or do it collectively, and then one and then the other. And you can give some different words. Now, what you're showing them is, if they think about it, they can do it. By now, what you should have in that room full of children is them and you being amazed at their beautiful handwriting. And if it's not beautiful, you need to think, why? Have I not supervised enough? Have they not written slowly enough? Have they got the instructions right? Have they had enough practice at that letter shape? Because I have literally gone into whole classes of all ages, and I do not know the children, and I have a long handwriting session, and people are amazed at what children can do. And when you compare it with their normal handwriting, it's gosh. Now, this is great psychology, because of course they haven't got this embedded, and of course they can't be fast. But by Jove, you've shown them it in one lesson, they can make this enormous change. And you're not rushing them for once. And you know, it's incredibly therapeutic to do this practice. When I was sort of finding out about this teaching style, I had a year 1, year 2 class like some of you. And I inherited children from reception who had good phonics. They could spell, they could orally segment and spell, but they weren't confident writers. And I'm thinking, what's going on? They can write, they can think in terms of spelling, and they were articulate children. And it was their handwriting. They did not have confident automatic handwriting. So at that time, I set about teaching all of the children, year 1 and year 2, how to do this style. And you've never seen anything so incredible in your life. So quick, so successful. They'd come in the morning, get their pencils out, I'd put music on, and they would do their practice. And it was incredible. By Christmas, for my year 1s, they could all write a whole page or more. So with good phonics and good handwriting practice, that is what I was getting. I kid you not. So where we're going to go with this now is, what about if you have a year 1, year 2 class now? I still advocate print in year 1. So just because I could teach year 1s doesn't mean you should automatically do it. Make the print secure. So how does this work? If you are working with your whole year 1 and year 2 class, and you're writing on the board, just write in print. If you are working with them separately, you can write in print for year 1s, and you can write in joined handwriting for year 2s. When you know you've thoroughly taught your year 2s, you can still write in print for the whole class, but you can say to your year 2 children, you can write in your fully joined handwriting now. In fact, what's important is that when you know that you've confidently taught them what to do, they can intellectualize it themselves, that you pick a day and you say, from now on, children, when I ask you to write in your joint handwriting, you need to. I'm going to ask you to. Now, what this means is that the vast majority will, because they're gagging at the bit to look so grown up. And you might get some little stragglers that are reluctant, but they do know how. But don't worry. Now, Tricia knows my technique here, right? It's, oh, don't worry. We'll stay in at playtime and I'll help you with that. So it's right, really nicely and sweetly, you're going to help with them with that, and they're going to forego their playtime. Now, the worry is that they love you so much that they don't mind at all. And so what we do is we turn everything into a win-win. So either they don't want to stay in, and you've made them because we're going to do that transition, they need to do it, or they love you so much they want to be with you, but you've helped them anyway. So when you know they can do it, they need to do it. Now, all these little children on Twitter where we don't see that happening, somebody's either not taught them well enough, not insisted that they do it, so there's something wrong with that technique. I don't believe they can't do it. I don't believe it. And I've taught for so long, in so many age ranges, so many different children. Now, having said that, I'm not now talking about special needs. I'm not talking about children with real physical disabilities or intellectual disabilities. I'm talking about our sort of children across the spectrum who might be a bit clumsier, they might not have the dexterity and so on. But we can do a really good job with that, and you need to know that. But to have high expectations means we have to do all the tiny steps to get them there. And this form of teaching handwriting is the tiny steps to get them there. So how are we doing for time? Right, I'm nearly out of time. So we've done the K, and we can do some words. I've got examples here like back. You can get them talking to you to do that. Now, how are you doing with your practice? Have you done your practice, everybody? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Right. Have you surprised yourself, or did you already know you could do this? If you've surprised yourself, put your thumbs up. Right, thank you, Claire, that's wonderful. Okay, another thumb there. Right, now, true anecdote. When I've done this with whole halls full of people, sometimes there's an individual in there who's absolutely focused on this style and suddenly says, oh my goodness, I didn't know I could write so well. This is better than my ordinary handwriting. So for some people, it's actually, you know, like a revelation that they themselves can do this. It's changed their own perception of what they themselves can do. But when we are teachers and teaching assistants, and in schools, in teaching assistants are teaching as well, it's really important that we crack this and we all do it. So some of you might be finding it more difficult than others because you maybe aren't as naturally, have as much dexterity, or you don't perceive yourself as artistic, but that's okay because you are in the shoes of children. In our cross-section of children, that's what they're like as well. Right, so the next group is RNMP, and that order is quite helpful. So again, it's just on the line, diagonal, straight down, up and round, and then washing line join. So it's round and then washing line join. Now that's helpful to be doing that kind of a hook and the washing line join, because otherwise you get this. My pen's going. You get many R shapes where they're going down and they've missed a bit of the letter shape. I'm going to try red to see if the ink's a bit better. So you definitely need that up and round and then the hook there. So we practice that. That leads very nicely to the N, diagonal to half height, down, and then that bridge straight down, and then the flick, and the M, diagonal, down, and then it's bridge, bridge, flick. Now be careful here, because some people don't go right down in the middle. And at the moment, I need you to insist, because we are doing this beautiful handwriting as a school style. So they might do this. No, let's do it properly while we're at it. So when you're looking round your children, if they do that in a very kind way, point it out and make them think about it. It's a full bridge and another one down. And then we're doing a P. So it's diagonal to half height, straight down through the line, back up and round, and join on the line. Get them doing several ones of those. And then again, after that section, find some words, stand there and get them to talk you through it. Right, turning over in our books. Next sequence, IJUY. Diagonal to half height, straight down. Now it's really important that you're saying diagonal and then straight down, because otherwise you get this. And the alternative is no spacer. You get this, all scrunched up. And when children don't do a spacer and they scrunch everything up, it looks childish. And we're sending children off to secondary school. And we need them all to be able to write beautifully if the occasion calls for it. And we know when they go to secondary school, they'll go to a quasi-print. And they'll develop their own handwriting style. And the secondary school teachers won't insist on that lovely writing. But the thing is, it doesn't matter, because we've discharged our duty as primary school teachers and we've given them choices. And I'm passionate about that, the rationale for why you should bother. Because very often in the subject of handwriting, you will get from teachers themselves, well, I write perfectly well. Oh, well, I don't do that. My writing can be read. Why should we do that? Right, handwriting's not important, but then you're not giving your children choices. So I would argue against all those kind of arguments, that they're not quite good enough, because we have to ask ourselves as primary teachers, do we want to be as good as we can be, to teach as well as we can, to reach every child, to give them maximum choices as they grow up into adults? And I know what my answers are. And one of the most provocative and powerful things I say to schools or say to teachers is that if you had a handwriting policy for your school and you wrote out the reality in your school that children can sit how they want, hold their pencils how they want, hook their hands round, so obscure their writing, write in scruffy writing, would that be an acceptable policy? But if that is the reality in schools, that's the policy. And I know as a parent or a grandparent, I would want the school to do the very best they can. If they do that in handwriting, they're doing everything else as well. Right, so then we've got, I sound like a horrible woman, don't I? Like an old tartar. Okay, if the hat fits, wear it. Right, J, right, diagonal to half height, straight down through the line, thin loop, and a dot. At the moment, we just do dots, not footballs, not heart shapes, just a dot. Then U, diagonal to half height, straight down to form that cup shape, and straight up and down. And that leads beautifully to the Y, diagonal to half height, then form that cup going straight down and back up, straight down through the line and a thin loop. And then you can do some words. And we're right at the end. And interestingly, at the end, all the little tricky ones. So we've got V with a washing line end. W washing line, X with a washing line, Z with a sort of little flare bit. Now, out of all of these, there is just the X where we were going to need to take our pen off. So let's quickly practice V and W. So diagonal to half height, and then get them to stop and think, because then they need to do that sort of going down as a zigzag or a diagonal and back up like that and washing line join. So the little steps really help them to do the good letter formation. Same with the W. Diagonal to half height, stop and think where you're going to go directionally, and then down, back right up to the same height like that. So personally, I'm not doing this kind of W. I call that a builder's bottom. So I just personally prefer this. You might not like it, you might want to modify that. Now for the X, it's a bit trickier. So it's pencil on the line, diagonal to half height, stop and think, down to do the first stroke, pencil off and start under that bit and go up, and then the washing line join. Now in my phonics programs, when we're doing the print for this, I do something which is very unexpected to schools. When I do the letter X formation, I don't do what you might expect, which is down and then to the top and down like a kiss. I'm already promoting for print, down, pencil off, and then up, because you've got that nice diagonal stroke, but you need a washing line join after it. And when you look at children's handwriting, kind of, sometimes it's fudged. They don't quite know what they're doing and where. It's just a fudge of a letter shape. So it's practice that one. Then we have Z where we need a bit of flair. So it's diagonal to half height, stop and think, straight across from left to right, back down, and then a little flare like that, ready to join. So it's about doing that diagonal as a discrete thing, then stop and think about the print and what we're going to do with that. Now, by this point, you'll find the children are amazing. And quite a lot of your children, if you had like a protracted handwriting session, so I've done a lot of talk and pontificating, and I've spent an hour with you. It might take longer for you to go around the class, pick up on children's letter formation, for them to tell you how to do it on the board. So you might not do it in one session, you might need 2 protracted sessions, but then your Key Stage 2 children at least can do it. The next step is to give them a sentence or a paragraph in print. So it can be something you do on the board, but better still, if you put it in front of them so they don't have to keep looking back up and down. And if they've got a dyslexic tendency, it's quite cruel to make them have to look at a board and then translate. So they need a piece of print in front of them with all of the letters. It doesn't matter what the print is. It can be from a reading book even or something. And all you say to them is, right, children, have a go at copying it. Think about those joins and see how you manage. Now with capital letters, I still keep them as printed capital letters. So they do the capital letter, leave a little space, and then pencil on the line to start that lead-in join. So you see, I'm not against lead-in joins. I'm against teaching little children a form of print with a lead-in join. And it's something very, very different indeed. Now, obviously, I don't know what age children you are, but I would hope that you're going to have a go with this with your children. If you've already started it, and I might have added a bit of something interesting, refine it, see, you know, look at your children's handwriting, do that baseline, give it a go. And then I'm going to ask Tricia and or Sarah to get back to me to see how you get on with that. Now, how you get on with that is important to me, because if people don't feed back to me, I work in a vacuum. So it's really nice to know, to say, Debbie, we tried that and it was really successful. Or Debbie, actually, we've got this problem. This didn't work right. Give me those, give me the problems and I can make suggestions. But wouldn't it be wonderful if we became a sort of Norfolk community to see how we can do with our handwriting? That would be so wonderful. Tricia, what do you think about that suggestion?
I think that's a great idea, Debbie. I think once staff have an opportunity to use it with children in school, they'll really be able to see what works and what they're finding tricky. So for you to be able to help us with that would be fantastic.
I would be so pleased, but also I think that it's about me then being able to take some maybe examples from you, anecdotally and children's examples, and I can put them on a website and sort of enhance that two-way process. Now someone's asked a question. Do you want to unmute someone who's asked a question?
Yeah, hello. I was just wondering if you would show me the E, just because it's a bit different and I just want to get the wording right of when I'm showing children. Sorry.
Right, okay. No, that's okay. I've not really given you loads of practice at this. Right, I'm going to direct you back to the front page. Let's have a look at what I've said there. So I'm saying that with letter E, we've got a diagonal join. So in effect, we are modifying our diagonal join. It has to go in a bit lower than normal to swoop round into an E. And if we've got a washing line join, we set off and we're dipping down. So let me draw that. Let me do it. Right. So let's say we're coming from a top one. Let's say we're doing OE. So we do O. Let's do toe. So we're doing toe. We do the O, diagonal, hook over, catch it. And then knowing I'm going to do an E, I'm going to go lower with my washing line join, like that. That's a bit spread out maybe. So your washing line join would be like this. If it's going to another curly letter, be that kind of height, or even to a tall letter. Let me do something where we're going to go OT. Right. Okay, I made up word like that. Washing line join to the T, and then up, down. So with a washing line join, you're kind of doing it being even to the next letter, whatever it may be, to then go up and down or hook over. But when we're going to the E, it needs to swoop down a bit. But with all the other letters, it's kind of going straight across, either to a tall letter, or if it's to a letter like N. So we've got the diagonal, hook over, washing line join, straight down for the N. So you've got it going straight across to the tall letters, straight across to those going down, but with an E, it's got to do a dip. So I want all of you to write toe, just write toe and see how that looks for you. So diagonal, up, down, diagonal, hook over, get ready to do a washing line, but we bring it down a bit. And then we cross. So with this fully joined handwriting, we only dot I's and cross T's when we've done the whole word. And even if you've got a left-hander, you still need to go from left to right. Now, this is a really good question I've been asked historically. With left-handers, do we let them do the tops of things going from right to left? No, keep it consistent, keep it simple. The proviso for that is when you've got your teeny children, and we might be doing some air writing, and air writing is not a brilliant handwriting thing. It's a way to engage a class full of little children interactively, and they don't visualize letter shapes, they see actions. But if I was modeling air writing for children when they're teeny, I would turn my back on them as far as I can. If I know they're right-handed, I'd put them on my right side and I'd model with my right hand. And if I know they're left-handed, I'll put them on my left side and I'll model with my left hand. So what we're aiming to do with our teaching is make it as close as possible to what the children need. and really think they don't have natural directionality necessarily. So keep it simple. And ironically, in the early years, we often have circular tables and hexagonal tables, and we can't supervise them properly. So for my phonics, I suggest get some rectangular tables, even if you put them in a V and sit there and face them as you assess them upside down as they're working. Because often we damage our backs or make our backs ache because we go around doing tentative marking and leaning over rather than sitting opposite them. So that's not good on us. And actually lots of teachers' practice is to sort of swan around the classroom with tentative marking rather than really spend your time well. Are we happier about that E? And coming from the bottom as well. So if it's coming from the bottom here, whereas a diagonal would normally go like that, we're going it slightly lower down to fit in the E. So you're dropping that diagonal a little bit to swoop round. So what you do is you describe that to children and you give them some practice of coming from a washing line and swooping down, or coming from a bottom join and sort of swooping up. Now, eventually, when children get better, they can speed up a bit and this will soften a bit, but by Jove, it will look really fabulous. And you know, the effect on self-esteem for children when you equip them like that is massive. Now, I don't want to be critical, but when I see teachers marking, very often we do our personal handwriting for marking. And in a primary school, that's not acceptable, because you're expecting the children to write beautifully with the school handwriting and you're not doing it. So in a way, I'm being a bit throwing down the gauntlet, and I'm saying in the next couple of weeks, practice this if you like it and you're going to do it. Tell the children you're practicing a new school handwriting and see if you can manage it with your marking. But cut your marking right down. Keep it simple. Tell you how simple. Fab, fantastic, brilliant to your children. You know, words of praise. Now, any other questions before we finish? Tricia, Sarah, anything you want to add?
No, we're all quite happy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to work with you all. I probably won't be in touch, or you with me, before the summer holidays. Have a fabulous summer holiday and then feedback to me to see how we go. So thank you, everybody, and goodbye.
Thanks very much,
Bye.
Debbie. Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.